All right, we're 11:02, so so for you, we have this camera that is going to the people in the Zoom participants. So I'm going to try to make sure that they feel included in the presentation. So I'm going to get started. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Roger Allred, and I'm with Donor Connect. And so the purpose of Donor Connect is to facilitate organ recovery and transplantation. And we don't say harvesting, that's a TV word. We recover organs so that we can transplant. And this message is very important because it allows people to live. So when people ask me what I do and what Donor Connect does, I say we're all about saving lives. And that's what we do. We're saving lives. And you'll see in this presentation how that really works out. So just to give you a little background on me, I am retired. I was a businessman in California, retired to St. George. And so I teach in St. George. But we have 11 others that teach throughout the state of Utah. So I know at least one of you has seen a presentation. Have you other two seen the presentation on organ donation? Okay. Oh, you're also from Pineview. Excellent. Okay. All three of us. All three of you are from Pineview. Yes. Okay, great. Well, it just so happens that I'm going to Pineview High School on Friday to teach, but apparently the day is shortened, so I get 30 minutes. Yeah, that's what's happening. But anyway, I appreciate the opportunity. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to go through the presentation like I do with the kids, and I'll fill in some information as we go along. So we're talking about organ, cornea, and tissue donation. And you know what organs are, you know what tissue is, it's like skin and bones. And corneas are the lenses that fit on the top of your eye. That's what that is. And those, when it comes to the donation of corneas, that is handled through the eye bank, but we also facilitate. So hopefully, not advancing, why not?
Okay, try now.
Try now? Yeah. Excellent. So we're going to talk about, first of all, do you know anyone who has donated or who has been a recipient of transplant? So in this room, anyone? No. Okay. Well, that's okay, because we're going to talk about that today. First of all, we're going to listen to Lisa Ostmond. And for those that are listening from home, Lisa is also a presenter up in northern Utah. She started out in St. George, but she's in northern Utah now. But I want you to hear her story. And the reason I think this story is so important is here we have a mother. She's the mother of someone who donated organs to save other people's lives. And I think that is important for people who are potential donors to hear what a mother feels like about donating the organs of their child.
We caught up with Adam's mother, Lisa Ostmond, in Salt Lake City. She says she's always been an advocate of organ donation, so when Adam got his driver's license, he was excited to tell her he checked yes to be a donor.
He'd mentioned something very briefly to me, just when we kind of ended our conversation. He said, "Mom, if anything should ever happen to me, I hope you'll let them use whatever they can to help other people."
Just a few weeks later, Lisa said Adam, who struggled with being bipolar, was flown to the hospital where a doctor told her her son was brain dead after a drug overdose. Lisa's thoughts went back to the day he got his driver's license.
You know, if my son couldn't come back home, I wanted it to mean something. That conversation we had that day in the kitchen has blessed my life more than I can ever put into words. He's absolutely helped my heart to heal. If he can't be here with me physically, he lives on in other people, and that has truly been a blessing.
A year later, Lisa was told the man who got Adam's liver wanted to meet her. She was ecstatic.
The minute that doorbell rang and I opened up that door, he was with his wife, and I'll tell you what, it was just an instant feeling of family. I love that guy. He's awesome. We're very close. He is truly part of my family.
To become an organ donor, all you need to do is say yes on your driver's license or state ID card, or go online and sign up at www.yesutah.org. It's also a good idea to let your family know of your decision so your wishes can be carried out.
All right, I'd like to start with these last three items, and then I want to come back to Lisa's presentation. So, driver's licenses. So I am talking to people who teach kids about driver's ed. And so this is an important part. And the reason that this is so important is that we have doctors and hospitals that can take care of those who need an organ transplant. But we don't have enough organs to go around. And so we teach the kids. I teach the kids in Southern Utah in intermediate schools and in high schools and talk to them about what that check mark on their driver's license, yes, I want to be an organ donor, what that means, or if they check no, what that means. And so that's the reason that we're here today, is to make sure that when you interact with students, that you have the information so that you can help them understand what that check mark means. Now, if a person has chosen yes or no, and sometime during their life they say, that's not really what I want to do, especially after being educated on what organ donation is all about, they might say, gee, I made the wrong choice. You can go to yesutah.org anytime during your life and change that election. So it's in your control for the rest of your life. And then the last thing, let your family know of your wishes. The reason is this. So let's assume a student says, I want to be an organ donor. Yes. But if they don't talk to their parent about that and help them understand how they feel, the parent might have a different feeling if a tragedy happens. And until a person is age 18, that check mark on their driver's license doesn't mean anything because they're not an adult. So when they become an adult, yes, there is a commitment there. But until age 18, their parent or guardian makes that decision. So coming back to Lisa. So here she's lost her son, who was a high school student at Pineview. And they made the decision to donate his organs. What she says, I think, really, really captures the essence of what organ donation is all about. And that's this. Because of the donation of her son, 3 people are alive today. So he saved 3 people's lives and gave sight to another. But the mother says, it absolutely helped my heart to heal. And that's the message of organ donation in a nutshell. The family who's grieving gets comfort. And 3 people or more are alive because of that donation. So that's the reason that we're here. So let's just talk about the need for organs. I mentioned earlier that there was a great need. So UNOS.org is the organization that keeps track of those statistics. And those numbers fluctuate a little bit. So in the United States, typically there are between 100 and 110,000 people waiting for an organ. Just think about how many people that is, 110,000 people. In the state of Utah, because we have a younger population and because we don't have as many people as other states, we are about between 750 and 850 people typically need an organ donation. And you might say, well, that's not too many, but if that was your loved one, you would feel differently about that. The sad thing is because people get older and because people get sick, every 10 minutes, someone's added to the waiting list. And the really sad news, as the statistic says that they're in the upper right, on average, 17 people on that list die every single day, which is a tragedy because we could save them. Now, the great news is because of education, like we're doing, last year, over 41,000 people received an organ transplant and are alive because of it. And that is an awesome statistic. And that's because of education. Now, there are 3 types of donors. There are 3 types of donors. There are living donors, organ donors, and tissue donors. Living donors. These are people, well, actually, I'm just going to explain it like this. There's a famous person who has received a donor. So I asked the kids, you know any famous people that have received an organ? No, but they know her, Selena Gomez. So Lena Gomez received organ donation, and this is a picture of her, and this her Instagram post next to her thanking her donor, Francia Risa, who's her best friend, and donated a kidney to Selena Gomez and saved her life. That's a living donation. So I want to talk about that a little bit more. So living donation of organs, that would be a kidney or liver, and tissue, blood or bone marrow. So we'll start with a kidney. Our kidneys are about the size of our fists, and they fit right here in our back. We have 2 of them, but we only need 1 kidney to survive, or only 1 kidney to live a full and complete life. So many people ask about how does this happen? Okay, so will you be my volunteer?
Sure.
Just sit right there.
Okay.
Hold up your fist as high as you can. So this is approximately the size of Michelle's kidney. This is approximately the size of my kidney. See that? So can I be a donor to Michelle? No, why not? Too big? And does it matter that she's a female and I'm a male? No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter the fact that she's a female and I'm a male. And let's do this again. It doesn't matter that my kidney is larger. Thank you. My kidney can go into the body of a baby because they've done that. But there is a matching process that goes on. So they would, let's assume that, Michelle got the bad news. You need a new kidney or you're going to die. And I was in her circle of family friends. And I said, yeah, I've got 2. So they take a blood draw from Michelle, they take a blood draw from me. And the first thing that they would match is our blood types. I'm an O positive, so I can donate to anyone who's an O. Do you know what you are, Michelle?
I believe A negative.
A negative, so I could donate to her, but let's assume she's an A positive, then I could. Also in our blood, we have a chemical component of our blood called antigens. And those antigens have to be compatible. Because if they're not compatible and our blood types are not compatible, her body would reject that organ and it would be total waste. So they take us into surgery, they make an incision in me as the donor here or here, and sometimes here, and they go, so they can go either direction. They make an incision here or here in the shell, depending on where they want to put the kidney. They take a kidney out of me, they put it in her body, and she would be good to go, and I would be good to go. Now you might say, as I would, really? I want some evidence. All right, here's some evidence. This is a good friend of mine in California, and she's about the size of Michelle. And when her son was in his late teens, he developed kidney failure, and she was going to lose her son. And so she was matched, and she was able to donate a kidney to him. And this is a picture of her and her son at her son's wedding. So was he good to go? Yeah, he was good to go. He got to have a life, a career, a family, all that stuff. What about her? Well, she's a woman about this size. In her late 40s, she did a rim-to-rim hike on the Grand Canyon. So Grand Canyon, it's in the desert. You go off one rim, down to the valley floor, and up the other rim. Very strenuous hike with 1 kidney. So when I say you only need 1, you're good to go, I'm being absolutely true. So second organ, liver. The liver is the second largest organ in the body. It is about the size, in a person my size, would be about the size of a football, and weighs about 3 pounds. Fits right here in the gut. There's a large lobe and a small lobe. In 1988, they developed a process where they could take the small lobe of the liver and transplant it in someone else's body. Go through the same matching process, but here's the crazy thing. The piece that they take off of my liver grows back in 6 to 8 weeks. And that piece of my liver, even if it was transplanted in someone who was a larger man or transplanted in a kid who's still going to grow, that piece would grow to be a fully functional liver. So crazy. We have 2 kidneys, we only need 1. And we have an organ, the liver, where we can take a piece and it grows back, and that piece grows to be a fully functional organ. And why? And the answer is no one knows. But strangely, a student at Pineview said, maybe it's so we can donate organs and save other people's lives. Okay, I like that. So blood, we all know about blood donors. So when I talk to kids, I say, how many of you have been blood donors? And if they haven't, I say, well, you might want to think about that. How many of you have parents who've been blood donors? Many of them raise their hands. And I say, I want you to go home and tell your mom and dad, you're a hero, because what do heroes do? Say what? save lives. Everyone on this list is a hero because they've saved a life. Also, bone marrow. Bone marrow is used mostly for leukemia patients so that they can have good blood cells and it can extend or save their lives. Now, that's living donation. Now we're going to talk about organ donation. I've got to make sure that I don't go over. I'm going to leave some time for questions if there are questions. So organ donation, these are people who have died. And they typically die as a result of a traumatic head injury. So I asked the students, so how do most traumatic head injuries happen? And I get this, well, something hits them in the head. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, it is because of car crashes, car accidents. And I know you as teachers play in a very important role in keeping this from happening to our kids. And so you know about deadly behaviors. This is something that I talk to the kids about. But what I talk to them mostly about is this evil device. Some of them are addicted to this. And I tell them this. So when you pull out your phone while you're driving and you're texting, you're saying, I don't care about you at all. I don't care if I run into you, damage your car. You know, even if I kill you, I really don't care because my text message is so important. So I encourage them to put their cell phones away when they're driving because no text message is as important as someone's life. Also, I tell them if you have someone in your car who's distracting you, tell them to get out and walk home. Might be rude, but it's better to be rude than dead. So let's come back. So a person who gets in a car accident because they're texting and they take them to the hospital, oftentimes they have to put them on a ventilator. That's what that machine that is on the right-hand side is. A ventilator keeps them healthy so that they can recover, so that they can get better. But if they are brain dead, and you have to be brain dead in order to be an organ donor, that ventilator keeps the organs healthy in their body so they can be transplanted. And ventilators hang out in the hospital. They're not Walmart. So you have to die in the hospital. Now, I talked about brain death. You have to be brain dead. So this, I don't know if I can get over here. So this is how a doctor determines if someone can be an organ donor. They do a cerebral angiogram. So here's blood coming up the spinal column to the brainstem. From the brainstem, it's going through all these blood vessels to all parts of the brain, taking nutrients and oxygen. We all know if we're denied food or oxygen, we die. The brain is the same way. This is a cerebral angiogram with someone who has died a brain death, still blood in the spinal column, a little blood in the brainstem, but no nutrients and oxygen is getting to the rest of the brain. And so that person has died. Oftentimes, the doctor will say, I'm sorry, but your loved one has passed away. And we did all that we could. And they'll say, wait a minute, I was just in his room. His chest was rising and falling. His skin tones haven't changed. What do you mean his skin? He looks like he can wake up at any time. And the doctor says, I'm sorry, there's no brain activity. We did a cerebral angiogram and your loved one cannot recover because there's no brain activity. That's just a fact of life. All right, so here are organs that can be transplanted. A heart is also about the size of the fist. It fits in the chest right here. So there's a heart, 2 kidneys, 1 liver that can be bisected, like I just explained, 2 lungs, 1 pancreas, 1 set of intestines. So that's 9 potential lives that can be saved from 1 deceased donor. But typically we only recover about 5. That's about what we typically recover. But I want you to think about this. So you got 5 of you right here. Let's assume that every one of you is needing an organ transplant, a heart, a liver, a kidney, something. So now I'm a family member of someone who's just died, and the doctor comes to me and says, would you consider organ donation so that other people can live? And I say, absolutely I would. All 5 of you get an organ, you're good to go for the rest of your lives. Or if I'm a family member and the doctor comes to me and says, will you donate an organ so that other people can live? And I say, oh, yuck, that's icky. I don't want to think about that. Those organs go on the ground and you die. So when it comes to organ donation, I want you to think about that. All right, but there's a lot of rumors, myths, and misconceptions about organ donation. Let's start with this one. which is too prevalent, but you can watch it.
I renewed my license today. Check the box to be an organ donor. Dude, that means when you're in the emergency room and the doctors find out, they're gonna slow down. Do you realize how many people need organs?
So I do not recommend that you hit your friends in the head when they say something stupid, but I do recommend that you help them understand the difference between fact and baloney. So medical staff is going to try to save your life because that's their job. The people who take care of organ donation, that's Donor Connect. That's us. And the only time we get together is after the doctor has said, I'm sorry, but your loved one has died of brain death. That's when we enter the picture. So you never have to worry about a doctor slowing down to grab your organs. What if you have some medical conditions? Cancer, diabetes? No. Even if you cannot donate blood, you can usually donate organs. I'll say that one more time. Even if you cannot donate blood, you can usually donate organs. So what we say is, say yes and let the doctor decide. What does my religion say about donation? So you might think this is a good idea. So if that's you, just let your talk to your pastor, priest, minister, bishop, rabbi, imam, and say, what do you think? They'll all say basically the same thing. God taught us to do good and kind things. Saving someone's life is a good and kind thing. So he's probably going to reward you rather than punish you, but it's still your choice, whatever you want to do. Open casket funeral. So I've talked to all the morticians in southern Utah, which is where I live. And I've said, can you tell the difference between someone who has been an organ donor and someone who has not? And they say, absolutely not. It is our job to prepare that body so that there can be a viewing, because that's how some people get closure. So you don't have to worry about that either. Who pays for a donation? So I'm an accountant. I never told you that. I'm an accountant. That's how I was trained. And so I think about, well, doctor's bills, hospital bills. I'm not rich. Well, the minute the family says, we will donate the organs of our loved ones so that others might live, they don't pay another dime in medical expenses, not another dime. Those are picked up by Donor Connect and passed along to the recipient. They're thrilled to pay it because they're alive. Am I too young or too old? So there's a grandpa, just like me, a grandpa. If I were to die today on a ventilator, my organs would go to someone about my age, wouldn't go to a student stage, wouldn't, because they're too old. But they would be thrilled to get them because they got more time to spend with their grandkids. On the other end of the spectrum, we have babies. And people say, you take an organ from a baby. Well, think of it this way. A couple's waited 9 long months to have a baby. The doctor comes to them and says, I'm sorry, but your baby is brain dead. We did all that we could. I'm sorry. At the same time, another couple has waited 9 long months to have a baby. And the doctor comes to them and says, I'm sorry, but your baby needs a heart transplant. So if the first couple donate the heart of their baby to the second couple's baby, we have one tragedy rather than two. Remember, when we are talking about organ donation, it's about saving lives. That's what we're talking about. So this is an organ recovery surgeon. Now I'm going to show you what I show the students. These are pictures of actual human organs. Here we go. So that is a heart. That's a healthy heart. So a heart is a muscle. So I want you to look at the muscle tone. The yellow on that heart is fat, which is part of all our bodies to protect our organs. And so this is a diseased heart. So you compare that with that and you say, oh, that looks pretty healthy. Yeah, it is. This is Abby. She was at an intermediate school in southern Utah, collapsed in PE class. They air flighted her to Salt Lake, found out that she had a congenital heart defect. She received a transplant, finished school in St. George, was the editor of the Dixie State newspaper, and then graduated last year and got married. So now that man has hid the love of his life because someone donated their heart and saved her. That's a kidney. 80% of the people waiting for organs, that 100 to 110,000, 80% of them are waiting for kidneys. This is one of the reasons. That's polycystic disease. And the reason I show you that picture is that over 500,000 people in the United States have that disease. And that contributes to the demand for kidneys. This is Fapuyaki. When she was just a little girl, they had to put her on dialysis. And I know most people know what dialysis is, but this picture shows a picture of her in the upper right-hand corner and the dialysis machine. So I just want you to think, having a 2-year-old, those who are parents, having a 2-year-old who's on dialysis for 2 to 3 times a week for 2 to 3 hours at a time. How horrible that would be. Well, because of a donated kidney, Fapuyaki is now an elementary school student and doing well. This is a liver. That's a large lobe on the left, the small lobe on the right, the gallbladder in the middle, and the other flesh tones is that those are the fingers of the surgeon holding the liver. And then when I tell the kids, I say, okay, you know, in high school, kids are going to say, let's go party, party, party. But what did I do? This is what happens when you use alcohol. So don't do that. Not good. This is Annie. When she was 5 years old, she started turning yellow. Even the whites of her eyes turned yellow. And she had jaundice. And that's very common for babies, but not for 5-year-olds. They took her to the doctor. The doctor said, she needs a liver transplant. And we have no guarantee that she's going to be able to get that. You know, we have to find someone who's donated a liver to save her life. And so they were able to find a liver for her. And she is graduated from high school. I met her in Southern Utah, a wonderful girl with her whole life ahead of her. That's lungs. I like to call it a bucket of lungs. Maybe that's a little appropriate, but I do. And then I talk to the students about what happens to your lungs when you smoke, because that's what happens. And I also mentioned to them, sometimes people have the misconception that vaping is no problem, but vaping is a problem. We've already had to do transplants on people who have vaped. And what I tell the students, and I would tell anyone, I don't want anyone to be my age trucking around an oxygen tank with tubes stuck up their nose because of a decision that they made in high school. That is not what I want. So this is Colby. Sadly, he had depression. Sadly, he did not get help. Sadly, he committed suicide. The only silver lining is that Colby was an organ donor, and he donated his organs and saved Jerusha. Jerusha was a mother of a high school student, that she was about that age. And she got so sick, she was put in the hospital. And the doctor said, if you don't get a lung transplant, you're not going to live. You're not going to make it. Well, fortunately, she received those lungs, and now she's back doing what moms do and taking care of her kids. So transplantable tissues. We talked about living donation, living donors, organ donors. Now these are tissue donors. So blood, cartilage and ligaments, blood vessels, heart valves, skin, corneas. So we'll talk about bone. Lots of uses for bone. I'm not a surgeon. Remember, I'm an accountant. But one of these that I know the most about is bone powder. This past summer, I was on a reunion with my family, and I had an emergency tooth extraction right here. When the surgeon pulled that tooth out into the socket, he put bone powder. That's actual human bone that's ground to a powder. And that bone powder stimulates the growth of my own jawbone. And because of that bone powder, now I have an implant right there where my tooth was. Tendons. Athletes know about ACL tears and meniscus tears. ACL tears are repaired with donated tendons. This is Brennan. He lived in Idaho where they didn't have trash pickup. And so he and his friend were assigned to go burn the trash. So they went and they wanted to go play because they were young. And so they put gasoline on the trash and thought this will get that going a lot faster. Well, when they lit the trash on fire, it caught his shirt on fire. And so I don't know if you can see it clearly, but here, this is what it did to his body. Because his friend was there, he helped roll him and saved his life. But it was the donation of skin that had allowed him to recover. He would have not have lived had it not been for the skin that was donated to save his life. And now, as the upper right-hand picture shows, he's a dad with kids of his own, which is awesome. Corneas, okay? So from a deceased donor, they take a cornea up in the upper left-hand corner, and they put it on the eye. They sew it in. Oh, and this upper right-hand corner, this is a diseased cornea. See how it bulges? So that has to be replaced. And so they sew the cornea in, and then that person can see it. So that is the awesomeness of tissue donation. So in the last few minutes, and I'm going to leave time for questions, I'm going to tell you why I am here. So this first picture I'm showing is a picture of me and my son when we climbed Mount Whitney. I was in my 40s. Mount Whitney, 14,500 feet above sea level. And it was an awesome hike. Nothing but rocks up there because it's above tree line. Well, he came back and he went back to school and I went to work. So I was sitting on my computer one day typing. All of a sudden it felt like someone had hit me right here with a 2x4. And the force of it knocked me on the ground. So here I am laying on the ground and I'm thinking, I'm going to die. Because my dad had died at 52 of a stroke. And I was sure I'd had a stroke. But I thought, I could still think, maybe I should do something about this. So I crawled to my desk, and that was back in the time that phones had cords. And I picked up the phone, and instead of calling 911, I called my wife. And she said, I thought there was a 50-50 chance she'd be dead when I got there. So I never should have done that, but I did. So she took me to the doctor. The doctor did all sorts of tests, including a spinal tap, so I know what that feels like. They came back and said, you have atrial fibrillation, which means the top chambers of my heart, the atria, instead of beating rhythmically, are just beating whenever they want. That allowed a blood clot to form on my heart. That went to my brain, and I had a transient ischemic attack, a mini stroke, and that's what knocked me on the floor. So the doctor said, okay, we're going to fix that. We're going to give you blood thinners so you don't form any more clots, and we're going to put a pacemaker in you to get your heart beating rhythmically. 6 months later, oh, this is what I did most of the time. I would go to work and I'd come home, sit on the couch with my wife and my channel changer because I just didn't have any energy. So I went back to the doctor and he said, bad news, your x-ray shows that your heart is growing, which means you probably have cardiomyopathy, which means that your heart muscle is dying. So we're going to give you more medications and just hope we can stabilize you. Well, it worked okay, but about 2 years after that, because I had cardiomyopathy and my heart muscle was dying, I developed ventricular tachycardia. So the bottom chambers of my heart, the ventricles, rather than squeezing and sending blood to my brain, would sometimes just quiver. And if I get no blood to my brain, what happens to me? I die. That's right. So the doctor said, well, I'm going to send you to UCLA. So there I am at UCLA. Just so happens they were doing a program for Good Morning America on pet therapy. So they brought that big floppy dog and put him on my bed. He did nothing to help my heart. But, you know, I had my 10 seconds on TV. And while I was there, they put this device in me right here. This is an implantable cardioverter defibrillator. So from the top here, wires went into my carotid artery and down to my heart, and my heart muscle grabbed onto those wires. And this is like the AEDs that you guys have in the schools, okay? So this is a defibrillator, and you've seen on TV shows, they put the paddles on the person, and they say clear, and then they shoot them with a bolt of electricity, and the body bounces. Well, I know what that feels like. So this shocked me 11 times. It felt like someone was on the inside of me with a baseball bat, just swinging at my rib cage, and my body literally would bounce. The last time I was home alone, and I passed out, and I woke up, and I still remember the cold of the tiles on my face. My head hurt. I put my hand up here. I had blood on my hand because I had fallen off a chair and hit my head on the tile. Just so happens where I was when I woke up was under the telephone. So I reached up, and who did I call this time? My wife. Yes. I don't learn. So she took me to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, this did its job. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. So he read it from with an external device. But then he said these words to me. Excuse me, Roger, you are dying. You don't want to hear that from your doctor. You don't. So he put me in a transport and sent me to Cedars-Sinai Hospital. So that's me in Cedars-Sinai Hospital. Hooked up all sorts of wires and drugs that kept me alive, hoping that someone would donate a heart. And I'm an O positive, so I'm pretty much a universal donor, but I have to get a heart from O positive. So that's what I was waiting for. 18 days later, they said, we've found a heart for you. So they took me into surgery, and you know this bone that goes from here to here is your sternum. So your heart is right under the sternum, and in order to get to it, they have to get it out of the way. So they saw the sternum, they opened my heart. I remember the picture I showed you, the red floppy heart. That's exactly what mine looked like. So they took that, threw it away, and put in me the heart of a 22-year-old. Then they put the sternum back together. You can't sew it. So they wired it. And so even today, if you see an x-ray of my chest, it looks like I have little wire bow ties running down my sternum. They're still there. The wires are still there. And now here's the crazy part. After that, I was still in ICU recovering from this transplant operation. And I said, well, I'm going to climb Mount Whitney again, which was really crazy because only 3 weeks prior, I couldn't climb up to my second-story bedroom without stopping on the stairs twice and just, okay. But I was 16 months later able to do that. So that's me and my wife. And Landon's on the end, and 2 other sons, a daughter and some of their spouses. We climbed 6 days, 60 miles, 14,500 feet above sea level because of this mark. Now, some people say, it is so awesome that you're able to do that. And it is, but I can tell you from my own personal experience, it is nothing compared to the fact that I was able to see my children married and my grandchildren born. So it's been 11 years now, and I wrote a letter to my donor every year and got nothing. Nothing. And it's an anonymous donor, so I didn't know who it was. And right after my 10th anniversary, I got a letter back. I got a phone call back from the people who handle these letters saying your donor wants to talk to you, the donor's mother. And I said, oh, really? Is this a scam? And he said, no, you can check this out. And so I did. I called California and talked to the person there that handles it in California. And they said, no, this is her. Her name is Zulema Fragoso. And so I called her up and I expressed my appreciation for this heart that she was able to donate to me. And she expressed appreciation to me for coming into schools and talking to kids about organ donation, because she saw how this saves lives. And her son, Giovanni Fragoso, that's a picture of him, was not a good guy. He was in a gang and he died in a 7-Eleven. In a 7-Eleven parking lot at 1 a.m, when probably a rival gang came by and shot him. They took him to the hospital. They declared him brain dead there, and his heart now is in my chest. So I've heard someone say, no matter how you've lived your life, you can go out a life saving hero. And that would apply to him. He was in and out of jail, in a gang, but he blessed my life. He's my hero. So now we have less than 10 minutes. Are there any questions that I can answer? Yeah, well, like I tell the students, I must have done a perfect job of explaining. Perfect job. Okay.
We have a question. I have a question online.
Oh, please.
Yeah,
Thank
we'll
you.
bring up the chat.
Are you able to have your presentation or someone up in Salt Lake come present these to our classes? And how do we do that?
All right. So can you see Michelle right here?
Hello.
Michelle is the person who organizes those presentations, and we have 11 of us that are doing this throughout the state. She's the one who makes that happen.
How do we get contact information, or what do we look up?
Okay, so my email is Michelle, MICHELLE .Lansbarkis, which is LANSBARKIS @donorconnect.life. You can just send me an email and I'll talk back and forth with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize for ignoring you folks at home. Is there any other questions that you guys at home have that I could answer?
Let's check the chat real quick.
Okay.
Make sure.
So while she's doing that, just so that you know, after a person received an organ transplant, they have to take immunosuppressant drugs. And so I take drugs and have been taking these immunosuppressant drugs for the last 11 years, and that's what's kept me alive. So, you know, there's a whole group of people that have allowed me to live, including my donor, the doctors, and the pharmacies, and the people who take care of that. All
Oh,
right.
yeah. Yeah, here. I'll just type my email on this.
So Michelle's going to type her email for anyone who would like to get in contact with her. But are there any questions in the meantime?
One thing that I know, just because you told me, but these guys, you can only use that lobe one time, right? Even though your body remakes it, you
Yes.
can't use it over and over.
So when they take the lobe of the liver off, it grows back, but it has a different structure. And that structure does not allow it to be transplanted again. So, yeah, that's how it is. Yeah. So for those who are in the classroom, I have prizes. Who would like a heart and who would like a license plate holder?
I got one of each.
All right, I'll take the heart. You'll take the heart, great. All right, thank you. Anytime we can promote, we're gonna promote. Great, yes.
We also have more stuff and items on the desk out here in the lobby. okay?
Yeah, I've got one here.
And a raffle for a cool lunchbox.
All right, well, I think we're done. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Makes a job. That's why I love having to talk to the kids. So thank you.
It was nice hearing.
And it doesn't ever get old, so this is the first time though, after all the
Yes,
presentations,
That's
that this
right.
information has come
Yeah,
out.
there's just that this past year, I got to meet Julie.
Oh, you thought it was from a car accident, someone that was in a car accident.
I did. So here's an interesting, what I did is that I wanted to do something for her. And I couldn't think of what to do. So I went down to Build-A-Bear and I taped my heartbeat and put it in the bear. So now she's got this teddy bear that's got her son's heartbeat. Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was good.
Well, thank you for all you do.
Nice to
Appreciate
see you.
it. Always good to see
Okay.
you.
And I'll be at Pine View on Friday.
Awesome. I'll probably see you in the halls there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate you listening.